Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The Crown Prince is marrying my sworn enemy, Vivienne Shen, as his crown princess. When Lucy came to deliver the news, I was sitting there embroidering my wedding dress. The very gown I had been preparing to wear when marrying the Crown Prince. The needle pierced my fingertip, blood welling up, yet I hadn't pulled my hand back. I simply raised my head, my voice soft as a breeze. "What did you just say?" "Repeat it, I didn't hear clearly." "Miss, the Crown Prince wishes to marry the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter as his Crown Princess. This morning he personally requested the imperial decree, and by this afternoon, the edict has already been issued. I beg you, miss, please think this through carefully." I closed my eyes and carefully picked up the wedding dress, finishing the last few stitches. Each golden thread, each delicate stitch, felt like a blade cutting straight into my heart. After a moment, I slowly raised my head to look at Lucy, my voice barely a whisper on the wind. "Why? Just yesterday he spoke words of love to me, and with one turn, he becomes another woman's husband." My eyes reddened with unshed tears, the hatred so strong I couldn't even cry aloud. In my heart, only one word remained. "Why?" Adrian Zhao. I called that name silently, my heart torn and bitter, my eyes flooded with resentment. The next day, Adrian came to see me. I looked at his glowing complexion. Clearly the wedding night had been thoroughly satisfying. How ironic. Men truly are all the same. Getting straight to business, I suppressed the hatred in my heart and performed a full formal bow. "This humble woman greets your highness the Crown Prince." The formality was complete, neither arrogant nor servile. I saw Adrian's expression shift slightly, and a bitter smile rose within me. "On what grounds does your noble status mean I must be sacrificed?" Adrian's face darkened. He stared at me for a long while before speaking. "Vivienne, you have every right to blame me. I have wronged you, but this marriage alliance with the Prime Minister's household was unavoidable. You know Father Emperor no longer favors me as before and shows preference toward my fourth brother. My position as Crown Prince grows more precarious by the day, like walking on thin ice. Fortunately, Vivienne is magnanimous. Last night when I stayed with her, she learned of the deep bond between you and me, and she agreed to let me bring you into the residence as a secondary consort. She will absolutely not let you suffer any grievance." I silently watched Adrian, this man dispensing his so-called mercy, and suddenly found it laughable. All these years, I had never truly seen him for who he was. He seemed dissatisfied with my cold response and continued his persuasion. "You also know the general's manor has been under Father Emperor's suspicion for years. If I were to marry you directly, I fear it would only make him more wary and defensive toward us. Your family has served loyally for generations, but now only you remain. It's difficult to maintain the general's manor alone. I've heard Father Emperor intends to revoke some of the titles granted to your household. Bringing you into my residence as a secondary consort is the best solution at present. After I ascend the throne, I will certainly restore the general manor's reputation, and your life will be easier then. Then I must truly thank the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess for their generous consideration." I replied coldly, my tone dripping with sarcasm, followed by a slight laugh. "Allow me to continue, Your Highness. Please don't leave just yet. I have a gift I wish to present to you." Seeing that I seemed to have softened, he immediately pressed further. "What gift does Vivienne speak of? Show me quickly." I smiled gently, my voice light as a passing breeze. "Then I must trouble your highness to wait a moment." I turned to leave, but he called me back. "I preferred when you used to call me by my given name. Now it's Your Highness the Crown Prince this and Your Highness that. It makes me feel you still resent me." "Your Highness jests. You are the sovereign, I am your subject. If I truly become your secondary consort, I will be nothing more than a concubine. How dare someone of my humble status address the master by name?" "Vivienne, you truly still blame me." "Your Highness, please don't say that. I cannot help you in any way. I already feel deeply ashamed, so now I wish to do one final thing for you." "Your Highness, please wait for me a moment, will you?" With that, I gently removed his hand from mine. I walked into my chamber and retrieved the wedding dress I had finished long ago, carefully draping it over myself. I placed the phoenix crown on my head, applied my makeup meticulously, and stepped out slowly, one deliberate step at a time. I walked slowly toward Adrian. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, and I couldn't help but laugh coldly inside. Truly a man who wants to have his cake and eat it too. I took his hand and asked softly, Adrian, do I look beautiful? Beautiful. My Vivian is the most beautiful woman in the world. He embraced me, his voice flowing gentle as spring water, his hand gripping mine tightly as he made his hesitant promise. Vivian, wait for me. Soon I will bring you into my residence as my. I nodded slightly, then slowly raised my hand to caress his face, tears gradually filling the corners of my eyes. I asked softly, between the crown princess and me, who is more beautiful? He froze for a moment, then looked at me, his voice turning cold. Vivian, no matter how much I favor you in the future, you must respect the crown princess. She is the mistress of the household. There are words you should say, and words you shouldn't. For my sake you must be careful. Walls have ears. Your Highness is absolutely right. Just moments ago you called me the most beautiful woman in the world. I suppose that wasn't entirely sincere either. I spun once before him, my skirts swirling like falling petals in late spring. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice leisurely yet cold as ice. Then please remember this moment well. How I look right now. Because I will wear this wedding dress for you once, and only once. After today, I will never wear it again. Besides, a secondary consort has no need for wedding attire, does she? Adrian still tried to maintain his gentle tone, as if bestowing favor. I know you feel wronged, but I will make it up to you in the future. He continued spouting those ridiculous, laughable words, but I had stopped listening. I looked at him with a faint smile and said, There's no need, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Then, with perfect formality, I declared, Vivian Jung wishes Your Highness and the Crown Princess a harmonious union, growing old together in happiness. Vivian, are you angry with me? Adrian's face immediately darkened. Perhaps he never expected me to be this difficult. Even as the Crown Prince, he likely had never been forced to humble himself and beg. But what did it matter? I wanted him to remember forever how he had wronged me. That he would pay the price for the rest of his life. This heartbreak was no exaggeration. I looked at him with a slight smile. Though the general's manor has fallen into decline, though I am the only daughter left and cannot shoulder the household's burden, I am still a daughter of the Jung family. I will absolutely never become a concubine. If I agreed today, how could I ever face my ancestors? I humbled myself to come here because I value you, and to give our childhood bond a proper explanation. Yet you remain so unreasonable. If you refuse to enter the Crown Prince's residence, tell me, who else would even spare you a glance? Adrian was so furious he lost all composure, no longer showing me any courtesy. Only today did I truly see him for who he was. The saying goes, emperors are heartless. I had naively believed Adrian was the exception. Looking back now, I realize I was simply deluding myself with unrequited affection. I gently stroked the wedding dress I wore and looked at him, speaking slowly. Your Highness, do you know how long I spent embroidering this dress? 3 years and 6 months. My needlework isn't skilled, so I had to learn from professional embroiderers on the main street for many months. All because of one sentence you once spoke, that you wanted to marry me with a 10-mile bridal procession, giving me the most magnificent wedding. Every stitch, every thread carried my hopes for our future together. I once dreamed of growing old with you, but when I was nearly finished with this dress, you turned your back and proposed to the Prime Minister's daughter. I see now. I was foolish to aim so high. Now I've come to my senses. Even if the man I marry isn't as noble as the Crown Prince, I won't regret it. But I, Vivian, will absolutely never become a concubine. With that, I didn't give him a chance to respond. I removed the phoenix crown from my head and threw it to the ground, trampling it beneath my feet. Then I took off the wedding dress, grabbed scissors, and cut it to shreds, piece by piece. Adrian stood frozen, stunned by my actions. By the time he rushed forward to snatch the scissors away, the dress had already been torn into fragments. The phoenix crown lay crushed and scattered, no longer recognizable. Vivian, how dare you? Adrian glared at me through clenched teeth. In his furious words I caught a fleeting glimpse of genuine emotion. But what did it matter? In the end, we were nothing more than strangers. The only regret was that phoenix crown. I'd heard it was a keepsake left by his birth mother, noble consort Shu. Years ago, he had carefully entrusted it to me. Perhaps in that moment, his heart had been sincere, but his eyes were eventually blinded by overwhelming power and ambition. From the moment he personally requested that imperial decree, we were finished. Such a pity for noble consort Shu's keepsake. A woman who was once the emperor's most favored consort, yet in the end remained merely a consort with a high title. When she married the emperor, that phoenix crown was never once placed upon her head. Years ago, she cherished me so deeply that she entrusted me with her unfulfilled wish. It's a pity I failed her expectations and had no destiny to wear that crown while marrying Adrian. Perhaps it was all fate in affinity without destiny, a bond too shallow. In truth, Adrian's position as crown prince had little to do with noble consort Shu. Years ago, no matter how much the emperor favored her, the empress bore no children, and Adrian was the eldest son. In the end, he was given to the empress to raise. Noble consort Shu caused a great commotion over this, filled with resentment, but ultimately had to compromise. In the depths of the palace, who isn't forced to bend to circumstance? Thinking back, Adrian had indeed inherited 10 parts of the emperor's temperament. What a pity, he hadn't inherited even a trace of noble consort Shu's gentle warmth. Instead, he possessed the empress's cold-blooded ruthlessness. I heard the empress had a hand in this marriage alliance with the prime minister's household. Adrian picked up the shattered phoenix crown, his eyes red, rimmed as he stared at me. For a moment, I thought he might actually strike me. But he restrained himself for a long time, finally choking out, "Vivian, how can you be so cruel? You clearly know this was my mother's keepsake. Your Highness, some words shouldn't be spoken carelessly. Your mother is the noble empress, and this item was merely something noble consort Shu once bestowed upon me. Why should your Highness be so heartbroken?" I laughed dismissively, as if I didn't care at all, but my hands hidden behind my back clenched tightly, every finger trembling. How could I not feel heartbroken? Adrian stared at me for a long moment, then threw the broken crown to the ground once more and said coldly, "Miss Jung is quite right. It's merely an object. Just like certain people, nothing but decorations. Did you truly believe yourself so precious? Vivian, you refuse me today, but I want to see who in this imperial capital would dare marry you as a legal wife. This crown prince will wait and see. Your Highness may wait, but within 10 days I will certainly marry. And as a legal wife no less, excellent. But if you fail, it matters not. My crown prince's residence can easily afford one more concubine. When that time comes, I'll come to fetch you myself. Only instead of a grand palanquin procession, you'll enter through a side gate late at night in a small sedan chair. Vivian, if you're willing to bow your head now, there's still time. I thank your Highness for your kind intentions, but please leave. Even if Vivian dies, I will never become a concubine." After hearing my final words, Adrian flicked his sleeves and stormed out. The moment he left, I collapsed to the floor. What little dignity I had left vanished in an instant. From this day forward, I am simply Vivian, mistress of the general's manor. No longer the delicate flower who could only cling to others. By the time Lucy entered, I had already stood up. She looked at me with concern written across her face, calling softly, "Miss." I raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face, saying coldly, "Ungrateful wretch. Do you serve the general's manor or the crown prince's residence? Since he's promised to make you a concubine, then pack your things today and follow him." Immediately, I summoned the household guards to have Lucy thrown out of the manor. I had always felt Adrian knew too much about me, but never understood why. Recently, I had been quietly observing and finally realized the leak came from within my own household. When Adrian came to see me today and Lucy failed to report it immediately, everything became clear. In this tale of comings and goings, the only fool was me. I heard from the servants who had attended Lucy that after being expelled, she indeed went straight to the crown prince's residence with her belongings. However, since her mistress, me, had not yet married Adrian, the crown princess Vivienne used the pretext of betraying one's master, and immediately had her sold as a slave. Vivienne truly was a cunning woman. I had released Lucy partly to test her. After all, she grew up in the prime minister's household, and was well versed in palace intrigue. After hearing the servant's report, my heart felt strangely hollow. Fighting back and forth over a man, ending with blood on one's hands. What was it all for? I still clearly remember last year when my younger brother went to battle. He held my hand and said, "Elder sister, you must take care of yourself. The battlefield shows no mercy. Victory and defeat are matters of life and death, clear cut. It's not like this capital, full of hidden schemes that catch you off guard." How unfortunate that I would never again see that bright-faced young man who used to follow me around calling elder sister and begging for sweets. When news of his death in battle reached me, my hands trembled violently. How could he be gone so easily? He was still so young. It was only later I gradually understood. External enemies can be repelled, but those who stab you in the back are always your own people. Our Jung family had long become a thorn in countless throats. One they desperately wanted to remove, but couldn't. I don't know if it was Adrian's deliberate doing, but word of the wager between us spread throughout the capital in no time. Many were curious whether I could marry honorably or would fall so low as to become a concubine in the crown prince's residence. Some gambling dens even took bets on this confrontation between Adrian and me. How utterly absurd. When my servants reported this to me, I merely smiled without reply. We had reached a point where neither of us had any retreat. The crown prince had cornered me, yet the current emperor said not a single word. It seemed he simply hoped I would know my place and obediently enter the crown prince's residence as a concubine, so those who had conspired to harm the loyal could ease their guilty consciences. Truth be told, by this point I had begun to feel afraid. I even considered the worst scenario. If Adrian refused to let go, then even if it meant death, I couldn't allow the Jung family name to be dishonored. These anxious days stretched to the 6th day. Most people in the capital had placed their bets in Adrian's favor. My humiliation seemed inevitable and unchangeable. I sat listlessly in the garden, idly feeding the carp, when Fanny came running over breathlessly. "Miss, someone has come with a marriage proposal." Fanny was my new maid, originally a second-rank servant who was promoted to attend me after I dismissed Lucy. Though young, she was clever and seemed quite loyal. These past days, the wager between Adrian and me had made her extremely anxious, hoping daily that someone would come to take me away. Previously, whenever someone came with a marriage proposal, Fanny would show tremendous anger. This wasn't her fault. Most who came either wanted to exploit the general manor's reputation, were sent by Adrian's faction to cause trouble, or were simply greedy incompetents. As Fanny would say, plenty of peacocks strutting about, but all empty-headed and rotten inside. Good to look at but utterly useless. Given her past reactions, seeing her suddenly rush over so excitedly about a marriage proposal made me extremely curious about who could capture her attention like this. I frowned slightly at her improper shouting. How undignified. Oh my, it's only because this servant is too excited. I was too lazy to scold this lively, natured girl further. I'd grown quite accustomed to her by now. I asked directly. "Who sent the marriage proposal that has you so worked up?" Fanny's face lit up with joy. She took a deep breath and answered. "It's a proposal from the fourth prince. Fourth Prince Vincent Zhao." What an unexpected turn of fate. Vincent had never gotten along with Adrian. And due to my connection with the crown prince, I'd never had a good impression of him either. He always seemed careless and dissolute, with a certain roguish air about him. Not a trace of proper bearing. Yet I truly never expected that after being spurned by Adrian, the first person to propose marriage would be him. I couldn't understand it. Vincent was highly favored by the emperor and had always made Adrian wary. A man like that should marry a woman who could support his bid for the throne, shouldn't he? Why would he suddenly take notice of someone from a declining general's manor like mine? Could it be he wasn't as favored as rumors suggested? I thought no more of it and took the proposal letter from Fanny. It contained perfectly proper formal language, stating he would personally visit the manor tomorrow to pay his respects. I smiled slightly. Never would I have imagined someone as unrestrained as him could be so serious and refined, not only preserving the general manor's dignity, but also protecting my reputation as an honorable young lady. That evening, one of my trusted guards came to report that immediately after I received Vincent's proposal in the afternoon, Adrian's spy watching the general manor had rushed back to report. I smiled lightly, my expression calm. No need to worry about him. We still don't know what the fourth prince's intentions are, but the enemy of my enemy is my ally. His Highness the Crown Prince is forcing me to find my own backing. Besides, the general manor now has only me, a weak woman. What is there left to fear? Early the next morning, just after I finished breakfast, I heard that the fourth prince had arrived seeking an audience. I had Fanny invite him to the receiving courtyard. After making arrangements, I slowly made my way out. From a distance I could see Vincent seated at a proper distance. Neither too close nor too far, maintaining perfect decorum. I silently approved. Someone who knows how to maintain boundaries has a good heart. Somehow my favorable impression of him increased a little. I spoke first, without preamble. The general manner has fallen into decline. Our tea certainly cannot compare to palace standards, Your Highness. Please make do, but the Jung family will not fail in proper courtesy. Vincent replied with utmost seriousness. Miss need not be so formal. My presumptuous visit is already an imposition. I hope you won't hold it against me. What surprised me most was that when he spoke these words, he was completely earnest, not a trace of jest or impropriety. I nodded slightly and asked directly, "May I know the purpose of Your Highness the Fourth Prince's visit to the Jung household today?" Someone as perceptive as Miss must have already guessed. I've come for two matters. First, to confirm whether the wager between you and my eldest brother is true. As for the second matter, I can only speak of it after confirmation. I smiled coldly, my voice tinged with self-mockery. Hasn't Your Highness already heard? What more confirmation is needed? I did indeed make a wager with His Highness the Crown Prince. As a woman, that's all the courage I possess. Anyone who's been treated this way by someone they've loved since childhood would find it hard to bear. After hearing me out, Vincent didn't offer empty consolation. He simply pondered for a moment before replying gently. If that's the case, then I understand what must be done. Miss Jung, may I call you Vivian? Of course. Your Highness. Please feel free. Very well, Miss Vivian. Though what I'm about to say may seem abrupt, I speak from complete sincerity. Your childhood bond with my eldest brother originally had nothing to do with me, but now that you've made this wager with him, I wish to ask you something. If I were to come propose marriage with a 10-mile bridal procession, formally and honorably bringing you into my residence as my legal consort, would you be willing to marry me? If you agree, I will immediately enter the palace and request Father Emperor's blessing for our union. Your Highness should consider carefully. Marrying me also means offending the Crown Prince. The days ahead will not be easy. I must warn you of this. Unexpectedly, Vincent let out a gentle sigh of relief before replying. Whether I marry you or not, he and I are already irreconcilable enemies. Since that's already the case, what is there left to fear? What concerns me most right now is whether you are willing. As long as Your Highness can persuade His Majesty to grant the marriage, I will naturally wait with pleasure. I will remain at the general manor, prepared and ready for the day Your Highness comes to fetch me. I nodded slightly and offered a genuine smile. Throughout our conversation, I had been quietly observing Vincent's expressions. I couldn't clearly determine why exactly he wanted to marry me, but at least in his eyes, there wasn't a trace of disgust. That's enough. Vincent immediately stood to take his leave. Then please remain at the general manor and prepare yourself, Vivian. Within 3 days, the imperial decree will certainly arrive. You must be ready. I nodded and saw him off, breathing a sigh of relief in my heart. Word of my meeting with the fourth prince. I don't know who spread it. Traveled throughout the capital in mere moments. I heard the gambling houses had already begun taking new bets, this time wagering on whether the fourth prince could successfully propose marriage. That evening, Adrian came looking for me again. His expression was extremely displeased, his voice laced with fury. Do you truly wish to marry my fourth brother? The fourth prince is willing to propose with a 10-mile bridal procession and make me his legal consort. Naturally, I'm grateful. You clearly know he and I are like fire and water, that he could even threaten my position in the future. Yet you still wish to marry him. Your Highness couldn't give me that, but the fourth prince can. I am merely a woman seeking a place of shelter. Surely Your Highness the Crown Prince can understand this. I replied casually, yet my heart remained strangely calm. So this is what it means to have a dead heart. Even facing someone you once loved deeply no longer feels special. Adrian trembled with rage, pointing at me and grinding out each word. Do you realize that if conflict arises between my fourth brother and me in the future, I won't be able to protect you? But Your Highness the Crown Prince, you yourself said that's a matter for the future. Even now you have no intention of protecting me, do you? If Your Highness truly held even half a measure of affection for me, you wouldn't have cornered me like this today. Since we cannot persuade each other, then this is where it ends. If in the future our different positions put me in your way, please strike without hesitation. No need to show mercy. You're being stubborn and foolish. You'll regret this. Adrian trembled with fury from head to toe, but I felt nothing but satisfaction. This was a debt he'd owed me for far too long. I smiled inwardly and made a gesture of dismissal. I'm about to marry the fourth prince. I'm afraid it's no longer appropriate for your highness the crown prince to appear here. I won't see you out. On the wedding day, I will pay my respects according to protocol, but after that, I hope your highness will not come again. It wouldn't be proper. Father Emperor's decree hasn't even been issued yet. How can you be certain the marriage will happen? Vivian, don't celebrate too soon. Adrian let out a cold laugh, flicked his sleeves, and left. Fanny pursed her lips and stepped forward, her face full of indignation. Miss, His Highness the Crown Prince is being completely unreasonable. Compared to someone like that, the fourth prince is clearly far better. You seem particularly fond of the fourth prince. Could it be you have feelings for him? Seeing this clever maid of mine, I teased her casually, never expecting her to turn pale with fright. Only then did I suddenly remember what had happened with Wuzi. Though Fanny was young, she was perceptive. Seeing her panic like this, I lost interest in teasing further. I simply instructed her gently. Though the fourth prince and I cannot be an affectionate couple, we each have what we need from this arrangement. In the future, you must know to respect him, but absolutely must not behave with him as you do with me, speaking without restraint. You must understand proper etiquette and know your boundaries. Do you understand? Fanny understands, miss. Watching her bow submissively in fear, I didn't scold her further. I simply wandered quietly through the rear courtyards of the general's manor, passing one by one through my father's courtyard, my mother's, my eldest brother's, and finally arriving at third brother's small quarters. Places that were once so lively and bustling were now equally silent and desolate. Lately, I'd been having frequent dreams. In those hazy visions, I always remembered Mother's parting words. Vivian, you must remember. Our Zheng family has never been ashamed before anyone. You must stand tall and live with dignity, never bowing your head to become someone beneath others. You bear the Zheng name. The people of the Zheng family are all generals. Mother, I remember. I jolted awake, having dreamed again of Mother speaking those gentle words. When I realized I was awake, my face was already covered in tears. Fanny rushed in hurriedly. Seeing I had woken, she seemed about to say something. I waved my hand lightly, my voice hoarse. Go outside. I want to be alone for a while. She hesitated as if wanting to speak, but ultimately said nothing and quietly withdrew. I buried myself in the blankets, sobbing silently, not daring to cry aloud. I only whispered softly, Father, Mother, elder brother, third brother. Vivian misses you all so much. Vivian doesn't want to struggle anymore. I only wish for everyone to return home safely. The imperial decree granting marriage between Vincent and me arrived on the 8th day after word of the wager had spread. Vincent personally accompanied the eunuch delivering the decree to the manor. We both knelt to receive it together. In the imperial edict, His Majesty praised me as virtuous and dignified, a perfect match for Vincent. He bestowed many gifts and designated that we would marry the following month. Vincent received the decree with visible joy. He then turned to look at me, his peach blossom eyes crinkling slightly, his gaze both enchanting and carrying a touch of roguish charm. He said, Vivian, wait for me. This prince will certainly come to fetch you in the most magnificent procession. When he referred to himself as this prince, I hadn't yet realized what it meant. It wasn't until the eunuch beside us spoke up to remind me. Miss Zheng is now the future princess consort. The fourth prince's princely manor has been completed. On the wedding day, there will be no need to enter the palace. Our fourth prince has now been enfifed as the virtuous prince. His Majesty truly values him greatly. I smiled and replied, the eunuch speaks truly. I will certainly wait patiently for marriage, and in the future serve as a princess consort who understands propriety, never bringing shame to His Highness the virtuous prince. With that, I withdrew a small pouch of silver and gently placed it in the eunuch's hand. Today you've worked hard, eunuch. Please accept this to enjoy an extra cup of wine. Consider it partaking in our General Maynard's good fortune. Oh my, certainly, certainly. This humble servant thanks the future princess consort on behalf of myself. The eunuch accepted the silver and departed, looking thoroughly satisfied. I watched his retreating figure, a trace of suspicion rising in my heart. My eyes slid toward Vincent, trying to find some clue from him. I saw him smile mischievously. his expression not particularly serious, as he looked at me and said, "This prince wagers that my beloved consort must be wondering why the imperial decree came so quickly. Am I right, Your Highness? We haven't yet performed the wedding ceremony. Such forms of address are perhaps improper." "What's improper about it? Sooner or later it will be so anyway. Even Father Emperor cannot interfere unreasonably in my household matters." Vincent didn't seem particularly concerned, leaving me momentarily speechless. But I had more important matters to ask about. "Didn't you say it would take 3 days before the decree could be issued? Why so fast? For this matter we must thank my eldest brother. That day, after you and I reached our agreement, I immediately entered the palace. First, I went to see Mother Consort to report my intentions, then begged her to accompany me before Father Emperor. I believe marriage is a lifelong matter. Though I was born into the imperial family, marriage is still a major life event. Having parents to discuss it with is most proper. Fortunately, Father Emperor still favors me and didn't find my actions too abrupt. But just as I was expressing my intentions, you were still hesitating, while I was anxiously worried. Right at that moment, my eldest brother entered the palace. The crown prince entered the palace. I frowned, a strange premonition suddenly rising in my heart. Could it be because of me? I couldn't help but remember that day. Before he left, he had still said coldly, "The marriage decree is far from certain." Vincent smiled slightly, his voice tinged with mockery. "Can't you guess what he wanted to do? My beloved consort. Naturally he didn't want you to marry me. The moment he entered, he dropped to his knees, saying that he and you shared deep affection, begging Father Emperor to grant a marriage so you could become his secondary consort. As for the wager between you two, he claimed it arose from lovesickness, that he feared losing you and acted foolishly in his confusion. So did His Majesty agree? I'm truly curious." Adrian dared speak such words only because he had grasped several measures of Father Emperor's temperament. To suddenly speak up for a woman's sake would likely displease the dragon countenance. Father Emperor had already begun to waver. "Since I was asking to marry you as my legal consort, while my eldest brother only wanted you as a secondary wife." Actually, he was somewhat inclined toward my eldest brother, but then everything was disrupted by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager. I'm surprised she accompanied the crown prince into the palace. "No." Vincent shook his head. "My mother consort sent word, and she hurried over." My eldest brother's expression when he saw the Empress Dowager. I must say it was extremely ugly. She has always governed him strictly. The matter of marrying the Prime Minister's daughter was also meant to consolidate his power. Father Emperor understands this clearly. But since my eldest brother is the crown prince of the Eastern Palace, having his own calculations is understandable, so father didn't punish him. However, these past days, the Empress Dowager has been extremely displeased with his excessive attention toward you. To be honest with my beloved consort, this matter also involved no small amount of secret maneuvering on my part. I only hope you won't blame me. I had no intention of using you. It's just that without doing so, marrying you would have been truly difficult, increasingly so. How can Your Highness's words not make me feel grateful? After all, it's thanks to Your Highness's intervention that I avoided the fate of becoming a concubine. I truly never expected His Highness the Crown Prince would humble himself to ask for me as a secondary consort, even after words had been spoken that couldn't be taken back." Vincent burst out laughing. "If you wish to thank this prince, there will be many opportunities in the future. As for what my eldest brother thinks, that no longer matters now." I nodded. Whatever Adrian may still be scheming, it no longer concerns me. That day, Vincent didn't remain long at the general's manor and quickly returned to the new princely residence. After all, we hadn't yet married, so it wasn't convenient for him to stay long. But after leaving, he was far from idle. As if to let the entire world know, he acted with tremendous fanfare. Every day, precious gifts were delivered to the general's manor, some even explicitly designated for me to use as part of my trousseau. The person in charge of this was an elderly steward who introduced himself as Steward Luke. He conveyed Vincent's words. "His Highness says these are all additions to the princess consort's dowry. Please accept them with peace of mind." Everything was personally selected by His Highness from the treasury. Each item carries his thoughtful intentions. Vivian understands. I nodded obediently and gave Luke some rewards. In my heart, my favorable impression of Vincent increased several more measures. This fourth prince, who at first glance seemed like a frivolous romantic, was completely different from his reputation. Thinking back, most of my impressions of him had come from Crown Prince Adrian's descriptions. He always expressed dissatisfaction with the fourth prince's behavior, claiming he was frivolous, careless, and full of schemes. At the time, I believed those words completely, never doubting them. But thinking back now, they were perhaps not entirely accurate. In my eyes now, the fourth prince is far more intelligent and steady than rumored, and doesn't carry that arrogant, presumptuous air that outsiders described. In the days that followed, I calmly accepted the gifts he sent. Occasionally, I would have Luke take back small tokens, nothing expensive, just a few items I'd made myself. Each time Luke came, he would recount with eyes crinkled in smiles. His Highness was visibly delighted upon receiving them. Especially that sachet you embroidered yourself. The stitching was crooked and uneven, yet not only did he not criticize it, he even wore it to court and showed it off everywhere. For one fleeting moment, I almost believed Vincent truly liked me. But it was only a moment. I quickly dismissed the thought. How could imperial family affections be genuine? Look at noble consort Shu, the crown prince's birth mother, then at consort Qin, the fourth prince's mother. Look at me, who once trusted Adrian's love so deeply. We had all lost the ones we cherished most. Once you step through those palace walls, all hope and warmth withers away, leaving only power, scheming, and wounds. This one short month. I couldn't possibly finish embroidering a wedding dress in time. But Vincent had Luke convey his message. As long as you are present, that's enough. Don't worry about anything else. Before the wedding day, this prince will arrange everything properly. Though I didn't know how he would prepare, somehow I found myself trusting him. When I had free time, I often went behind the hills to practice swordplay. It was quiet and secluded there. Comfortable for training. Speaking honestly, I never expected Adrian would still have the face to seek me out. But this time he at least observed proper etiquette. No longer climbing walls and sneaking in as before. He had someone knock at the gate requesting entry, asking through a servant to see me once. I had a servant politely decline. I instructed them to say, "Our young miss says it's inconvenient to meet your highness before her marriage. If there's anything you wish to say, this servant can convey it." Adrian laughed coldly, his voice barely containing suppressed fury. "Good, very good. Does she truly hate me this much? Then have your mistress tell me. Does she still remember the words we spoke beneath the wishing tree at Golden Kingdom Temple, all those years ago? Does she remember our promise? Go ask her. I'll wait here." The servant hurried back to report. I still didn't raise my head, only said coldly, "Tell His Highness the Crown Prince to return." Those childhood matters were merely jest, no one took them seriously. He never found that young lady from years ago, and I've also lost the young man I once loved. From now on, there's no need to meet again. The servant, having heard this, was about to relay my words when I called him back. If he insists on waiting, let him wait. But from now on, whatever he says need not be reported back. If he still won't let go, just tell him this: I have already let go. May His Highness the Crown Prince achieve his heart's desires and no longer be troubled by romantic attachments. I watched the servant obediently withdraw. As the door crack closed, I caught a glimpse of what seemed like rain beginning to fall outside. But what did it matter to me? After all, I wasn't the one being drenched by the downpour. I heard that the Crown Prince stood the entire night outside the general's manor. Rumors spread throughout the capital. Some even said he had regrets, perhaps even to the point of losing his soul. That night, it rained without ceasing, thunder and lightning roaring, leaving hearts unsettled. I had Fanny keep the lamps burning all night, but still I couldn't sleep peacefully. It wasn't until the following morning, when she finally burned some calming incense, that I could catch a brief rest. When I woke in the afternoon, I heard news that Adrian had collapsed outside the General Manor's gates and had been personally carried back to the Crown Prince's residence by Vivienne. They say her expression at that moment was extremely ugly. I merely smiled faintly, secretly reproaching Fanny. If she hadn't shielded me so thoroughly, perhaps I could have gone out to witness Vivienne's expression myself. Vivienne and I had already harbored resentment toward each other. From the years when I still had my parents beside me, she and I had been two people who could not coexist under the same sky. From childhood, The Prime Minister's household praised Vivienne as dignified and generous, the capital's foremost talented lady. And what of me? I was her perfect opposite. Whenever people mentioned me, they would say, "Marry a wife like Vivienne, not that wild girl from the general's manor, who spends her days brandishing swords like some untamed creature." Those words had made me cry until my eyes swelled, but father would only pat my head and say sternly, "What's wrong with practicing swordplay? It's better than being locked in the rear courtyards, entangled in petty schemes and jealous rivalries. You are the daughter of General Zheng Wei. You should be a heroine capable of taking the field against enemies, not some woman who only knows how to compete for favor within inner chambers." Back then, father always said I was different from others, and I believed him. I followed elder brother to the library to study. Though I was a daughter, I still wanted a proper education. At that time, besides Crown Prince Adrian, few others would even speak to me. Others avoided me as if I were a plague, because in their eyes, I was no different from a wild fox spirit. No one wanted to come near. In their hearts, the ideal image of a wife was always someone like Vivienne. That's precisely why I grew increasingly close to Adrian. Back then, I thought he was different, that he had his own perspective, that he could see the good in me. But only today did I finally understand. Even Adrian couldn't escape those mundane worldly standards. I heard that after Adrian returned, he fell gravely ill with a high fever that wouldn't break. Even after half the palace physicians were dispatched, they couldn't cure him. He drifted in and out of consciousness, continuously calling my name in his delirium. They say it was proof of deep affection. Not wrong in the slightest. What's amusing is that the person who told me this was none other than Vivienne herself. Our chance encounter was truly the world's greatest joke. Clearly, Vivienne hated me enough to grind her teeth, yet now she had to humble herself and beg me for the crown prince's sake. She said to me, "Father Emperor said if you agree, he will revise the decree to fulfill you both." "Oh, is that so?" I smiled, deliberately drawing out my words. "Then is the crown princess willing to yield her position to me?" Surely the crown princess hasn't forgotten. I, Vivienne, will never marry unless as a legal wife. If I set foot in the crown prince's residence, you would become the concubine. Do you agree to that? You? Vivienne choked on her words, finally unable to restrain herself and exploding. "Vivienne, don't push your luck. Agreeing to let you enter the residence is already generous of me. Yet you dare covet the position of legal consort. Your general's manor has long fallen into decline. What do you have to compete with me?" Seeing her finally drop the pretense, I laughed aloud. "If you lack sincerity, don't put on airs of being magnanimous. Your coming here accomplishes nothing except delaying my marriage." Thinking carefully, my firm refusal to enter the crown prince's residence. Perhaps the person most pleased is you, isn't it? After all, the crown prince's heart belongs to someone else, and that person isn't you. How uncomfortable that must be. Tell me, am I wrong? After saying this, I lifted my teacup and took a sip, my heart feeling strangely light. As for Adrian's feverish delirium, I wasn't without suspicion. But because I couldn't enter the crown prince's residence, I couldn't guess what exactly he was scheming. It wasn't until Vivienne came to me with that hypocritical face, pretending to agree to let me enter the residence, that I footing understood. Adrian was putting on a show. He wanted everyone to see that he and I shared deep affection, so that His Majesty would soften out of sympathy. Even if the crown princess and Empress Dowager disagreed, they wouldn't dare bear the stigma of separating lovers. A truly beautiful chess move, creating the image of a devoted lover while forcing others to take his side. If I still harbored even half a measure of affection for him, the slightest waver would cause the marriage between Vincent and me to dissolve into smoke. Unfortunately, he underestimated a woman's jealousy. How could Vivienne willingly let me enter the residence, and I even less could accept serving the same man alongside her. Thus, the childhood romance between Adrian and me ended here, severed cleanly. That very night, right after Vivienne came to see me, my future husband Vincent secretly entered the manor. At the time, I was sitting in the tower reading when I heard sounds from the window. Startled, I was about to strike when I saw a dust-covered Vincent appear. Seeing I was still awake, he froze for a moment, then before I could react, he pulled me into his embrace. Warm breath brushed against my ear, his voice carrying relief. "Thank goodness you didn't agree to go with my eldest brother. Such good fortune." What are you saying? I gently pushed him away and replied calmly, I've already agreed to marry your highness. How could I do something so faithless? This prince trusts you. My beloved consort is the most intelligent person. He let out a long, deep sigh. The marriage between Vincent and me remained intact, clear and public. I would become his princess consort with full legitimacy and honor. Before the wedding day, the Empress Dowager secretly summoned me. The moment she saw me, that noble countenance of hers broke into a slight smile before she spoke. Worthy indeed of being the legitimate daughter of the General's Maynor. You're very clever and know how to read the times. Given the General Maynor's current situation, you and the Crown Prince could never have had a future. He is the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace. Even a secondary consort must be someone with power and influence. Your General's Manor, I'm afraid, no longer possesses such qualifications. I curled my lips slightly and replied without haste. Your Majesty may rest assured, this subject's general manner is not without sense of propriety. As for that ungrateful, disloyal type, this subject has lost all interest. If your Majesty wishes to counsel someone, I fear you're addressing the wrong person. If you truly want results, your Majesty would do better to keep a tighter rein on your Crown Prince. As soon as I finished speaking, the Empress's face darkened, even turning somewhat pale, but she couldn't do anything about it. After all, it was the Crown Prince who caused the trouble first. At this moment, Vincent and I were about to marry, and everything needed to proceed smoothly. Moreover, the Crown Prince was currently acting as if I were the only one in his heart. If the Empress caused trouble for me now, she would likely anger the Crown Prince. After all, he wasn't her biological son. The Empress was ruthless and tyrannical precisely because she feared that once the Crown Prince ascended the throne, he would turn and bite back, leaving her no way to survive. The scheming within the imperial family was as deep as the sea, suffocating. Sitting in the Empress's palace, I felt extremely uncomfortable. She said nothing, only stared at me silently, clearly employing a typical palace tactic, using oppressive silence to force submission. This was a standard method of establishing authority. Sitting there, I truly felt there was nothing to discuss. My mind began to wander, recalling Father's words. He wasn't wrong in the slightest. If they truly molded me into the type who spent all year fighting for favor and scheming, I probably wouldn't survive very long. While the Empress and I remained locked in silent standoff, a palace maid came to report, Consort Chun has arrived to pay her respects. The fourth prince's birth mother, famous for being gentle, dignified, and kind. The Empress was clearly displeased upon hearing this, but still set down her teacup and said coldly, Invite Consort Chun in. After performing her respects, Consort Chun showed no hurry to leave. No matter how many times the Empress frowned, she acted as if she didn't notice, maintaining her soft, elegant demeanor with a constant smile on her lips. Her manner was composed, gentle yet steady, truly the bearing of an experienced woman who knew when to advance and when to retreat. Finally, the Empress could no longer pretend and spoke coldly. Consort Chun has finished paying respects. If there's nothing else, you may go. Consort Chun smiled, her voice still gentled. Her Majesty speaks truly. This concubine merely heard that your Majesty wished to meet the future princess consort before the virtuous prince's marriage, so I specially made this trip as well. After all, your Majesty knows Vivian is this concubine's daughter-in-law. As a mother-in-law, I naturally wished to meet her once. Actually, I had planned to invite her to the palace earlier. I didn't expect it would coincide with your Majesty's summons. Don't you think that's quite fortunate? The entire passage was spoken with utmost gentleness, yet the meaning was clear. She had come to take me away. If I didn't leave with her, she wouldn't leave the Empress's palace either. A soft but decisive opening strike. The Empress's face darkened at these words, but she still forced herself to maintain composure, smiling as she replied, I know you care for him, but your words make it sound as if we're strangers. I am also the virtuous prince's mother. Naturally, I too wish to meet my future daughter-in-law. We are both mothers, both hoping for our children's well-being. Isn't that right? Consort Chun's words were gentle as cotton, yet each character carried hidden blades. Two women, one the formal adoptive mother, one the birth mother, neither willing to yield an inch. Your Majesty speaks correctly. Very well, I know you cherish this girl greatly. Then take her back first. If you wish, you may have her stay to dine with you before sending her home. After all, we're all one family. There will be many future occasions to visit the palace. This concubine thanks the Empress Dowager. This subject thanks your majesty. Consort Chun and I performed our respects together, and withdrew from the Empress's palace. Afterward, I followed her to Brocade Flower Palace, Consort Chun's residence. The place was decorated elegantly, carrying the atmosphere of a quiet, cozy home, feeling extraordinarily warm. I heard that the emperor was deeply enamored with Consort Chun's gentle, refined manner. He frequently came here to rest and particularly enjoyed the dishes she personally prepared. By all logic, she was currently the most favored consort in the harem. And the fourth prince was also a strong candidate for the position of crown prince. I truly couldn't understand why Consort Chun would agree to let Vincent marry me, a woman with no remaining power, who had too many entanglements with the crown prince. From the perspective of succession struggles, this brought no advantage whatsoever. Upon returning to her palace, Consort Chun dismissed all the palace attendants, saying she wished to speak with me privately. She looked at me, her eyes still gentle as water, her words soft and tender. Are you wondering why I agreed to the marriage between you and my Vincent? This subject truly hopes your ladyship will enlighten me. She smiled faintly. I have never interfered with any of Vincent's decisions. If he says you are a good person, then you certainly are. If he wants that position, I will do everything in my power to protect him. I am his mother consort, but first and foremost, I am his mother. I only hope that every step he takes is by his own choice, without regrets. But this subject can offer no help to His Highness the virtuous prince, I said softly, carrying a trace of self-mockery. Consort Chun shook her head, her voice unchanged. Whatever he wishes to strive for, he must rely on himself. If a man must depend on a powerful woman to reach high positions, then every day thereafter he will live in insecurity. What meaning is there in that? I trust my son. Even without those external advantages, he can still achieve what he desires. Moreover, I'm still alive, and my maternal clan still supports him. What difference does adding someone like you make? Since you're the one he chose, then marry with peace of mind. You may wait for marriage without worry. Other matters need not concern you. But there is one thing I need you to promise me. I must hear your vow. Please speak, your ladyship. I don't care what calculations you may have or what you plan to do in the future. But once you marry my son, you must not betray him. You must treat him with complete devotion and sincerity. If you dare to wrong him, then even if I must risk this life of mine, I will not forgive you. Do you understand? Your ladyship, I solemnly promise, if in the future any discord arises between this subject and His Highness the virtuous prince, I will never drag him down with me. She nodded, her eyes finally softening. You have spoken these words. I will trust you. I trust the daughter of the general's manor. When you speak, you will certainly keep your word. I am deeply grateful, your ladyship. After saying these words, Consort Chun had someone prepare lunch. The meal had just been laid out when someone came to announce, His Highness the virtuous prince has arrived. Consort Chun smiled but was in no hurry to have him invited in. Just a moment later, Vincent strode leisurely into the hall. Consort Chun laughed while scolding affectionately. I've told you countless times. You mustn't meet before the wedding. Why are you so impatient you had to rush here? Your son didn't come for anyone else. I came because I missed Mother Consort. Enough with your sweet talk. Later, have a meal with Vivian. After eating, remember to escort her home properly. Don't make me send someone. I thank Mother Consort. Your son understands. Ever since Vincent moved out of the palace to establish his own manor, he could no longer visit Consort Chun freely. Each time required submitting a request. This time when he came, word quickly reached the emperor's ears, so His Majesty also learned of my presence at Brocade Flower Palace. I was just sipping lotus seed and lily porridge, not even halfway through the bowl, when I suddenly heard the announcement, His Majesty has arrived. Consort Chun immediately led Vincent and me out to pay respects, but just as we bent to bow, the emperor waved his hand to stop us. His eyes swept over the table that hadn't yet been cleared, and he smiled faintly. How fortunate. I haven't eaten yet either. Thus, in a completely unexpected turn of events, I ended up sharing a family meal with Vincent's parents. Throughout the meal, the emperor rarely spoke, only quietly watching Consort Chun, attentively serving food to all of us. Occasionally he would smile gently, his gaze resting on Consort Chun and Vincent, looking every bit the affectionate, loving father. It wasn't until we finished eating in Vincent and I rose to take our leave that the emperor suddenly called me back. Initially, I wasn't particularly pleased with this marriage of yours, but since Vincent was determined, I yielded. In the future, I hope you can sincerely live well with Vincent. You absolutely must not be as willful as you were with the crown prince, disregarding his dignity. This subject acknowledges her fault. The emperor glanced at me. Seeing me kneeling upright with a straight back, he ultimately said nothing more, merely waving his hand lightly. Go on then. Vincent helped me withdraw. 10 days later, Vincent and I held our grand wedding exactly as scheduled. Fanny recounted later that on the day of my marriage, the 10-mile bridal procession stretched across heaven and earth. The wedding convoy wound like a dragon, with gifts numbering in the hundreds. My dowry led the way, followed by the betrothal gifts Vincent had specially prepared for me, a spectacle unprecedented in scale. I wore brilliant red wedding robes, a phoenix crown upon my head, and radiant ceremonial garments draped over my shoulders. Everything in red and gold had been personally made for me by Consort Qin. 3 days earlier, when I received the wedding dress that Consort Qin had personally crafted, I experienced a moment of wavering, feeling that Vincent's regard for me seemed to exceed all imagination. If this was all merely a performance, he had played his role too deeply and paid too high a price. On the wedding day, both the emperor and Consort Qin personally attended. What was rare was that the Empress Dowager didn't appear at all, allowing her to suffer some loss of face. I heard that both the crown prince and crown princess were present that day, but Adrian's expression remained dark throughout. Though he tried to maintain appearances, he couldn't hide his displeasure. Everyone who knew the circumstances understood the reason. They simply didn't mention it, not daring to touch his sore spot. At this point, on the second day after our marriage, Vincent and I entered the palace to pay respects to the emperor and Consort Qin. According to protocol, we should have first visited the Empress Dowager. But because of the wedding, the emperor deliberately prevented her from appearing. When Vincent and I went to pay our respects, palace maids informed us that the empress was unwell and declined to receive visitors. We had no choice but to redirect our visit to Brocade Flower Palace to see Consort Qin. Consort Qin bestowed generous gifts upon us. As she saw us out, she casually mentioned, "The Empress Dowager is currently under house arrest, and the Crown Prince has been implicated as well." I heard it was because the Prime Minister's household applied pressure over the Crown Prince's coldness toward Vivienne, leaving the Prime Minister thoroughly displeased. This time, the Prime Minister truly risked everything, daring to cause an uproar right in the middle of court. The Emperor had no choice but to order the house arrest of both the Empress and Crown Prince. Yesterday at our wedding, the Crown Prince was granted special amnesty to leave the palace solely to attend the ceremony. In reality, this was a clear signal from the Emperor to the Prime Minister that there was absolutely no possibility remaining between the Crown Prince and me. It would let the Crown Prince abandon hope and put the Prime Minister's mind at ease. This move was truly masterful. Consort Qin appeared to be the happiest person, while the Empress's faction didn't cause any trouble. After all, in their eyes, the fourth prince marrying someone like me couldn't possibly consolidate much power or status. Certainly nothing comparable to the Crown Prince. In the long term, when the struggle for the position of Crown Prince was openly acknowledged, the neutral court officials would have to reconsider their positions. Truth be told, this perspective wasn't without merit. After all, the general's manor had already fallen into decline, something anyone could trample upon. How could it be said to hold any status? Not long after Vincent and I married, he became noticeably busier. Strategists came and went from his residence. I knew he had his own calculations, but I didn't wish to interfere. During our time living together, I gradually realized Vincent was vastly different from his outward appearance of carefree indulgence. Every night he rested in my chambers. There wasn't even a single concubine's maid in the entire compound. I recalled our wedding night. That day Vincent had drunk a bit too much. His face was flushed, his movements clumsy yet touchingly gentle. He leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Don't be afraid. I'll be very gentle." Throughout that entire night, he truly treated me with utmost care, afraid I would hurt, afraid I would be uncomfortable. Though my body felt somewhat unaccustomed, my heart felt profoundly at peace. I thought that if the person beside me that night had been Adrian, there certainly would never have been such tenderness. Recently, Vivienne suddenly organized a lotus banquet at the Crown Prince's residence and deliberately sent me an invitation. My intuition told me this was a hangman feast, a trap disguised as hospitality, but at this moment I had no legitimate reason to refuse. I couldn't guess what she was scheming, but I had no choice but to attend. That day, I dressed splendidly, wearing my most expensive jewelry. Not for any other reason than to show those gossiping nobles clearly, even having left the Crown Prince, Vivienne, still lived extremely well. As expected, the moment I stepped down from the carriage, I heard whispers and murmurs all around. Having spent years training with sword and blade, my ears couldn't help but catch a few remarks, all along the lines of, "Posing the Crown Prince like this won't end well. Just the daughter of a fallen general's manor, who does she think she is?" I smiled coldly, held my head high, and walked forward step by steady step, letting them see even without Adrian, I could still live gloriously and walk with dignity. Those rumors, heard again and again, were nothing more than indirect flattery of Vivienne. I paid no attention, calmly descended from the carriage, walked up to her, performed full courtesies, then stood silently to one side without excessive words. This lotus banquet consisted entirely of poetry recitation, couplet composition, and refined literary pursuits, things I had never been skilled at. In the Jung household, when it came to literary talent, my eldest brother had been the most accomplished. What a pity he was no longer in this world. I watched as Vivienne finished reciting a poem herself, then turned to point directly at me, intending to invite me to compose a response. I smiled gently and said, "I fear I will invite everyone's ridicule. This humble subject has never been skilled in such refined pursuits. I'm sure everyone knows this well. Though my husband patiently instructs me daily, even now I can only manage passably." I frankly admitted my limitations, even adding a self-deprecating remark, leaving Vivienne momentarily unable to continue making things difficult for me in front of everyone. But inwardly, I remained secretly vigilant. Why did she want to humiliate me before so many noble ladies? The more I couldn't figure it out, the more cautious I needed to be. Before long, I heard a servant announce the Crown Prince's return home. Timing so convenient it couldn't help but raise suspicion. Before Vivienne could speak, Adrian had already assumed a dignified bearing and entered the great hall. Though this place was filled entirely with women, Adrian as Crown Prince brazenly appeared. Strictly speaking, this truly violated propriety, but certain formalities still had to be observed. "We greet His Highness the Crown Prince." The noble ladies performed their respects in unison. Adrian smiled faintly, his voice carrying several measures of arrogance. "You've all worked hard, ladies, you may rise. Today, let Vivienne attend to everyone properly. I hear my fourth brother has also arrived, saying he wishes to escort the virtuous princess consort home. I thought I'd drink a few cups with him." I stepped forward, performed a slight bow, and said with a smile, "I thank your highness for informing us. It's just that recently His Highness has been resting quite late. When drinking, your highness, please remember to show restraint." As soon as I finished speaking, Adrian's expression immediately darkened. He frowned, his eyes growing somber. Vivienne standing beside him also lost her smile entirely, her face becoming increasingly ugly. Clearly, she hadn't expected Vincent would suddenly come to fetch me. When she heard that the fourth prince had arrived at the residence, I distinctly saw her stiffen slightly, then frown faintly. Indeed, this was a banquet harboring ill intentions. Right at that moment, I inadvertently turned my head and saw a familiar figure standing behind Adrian, gazing at him with infatuated eyes full of unwillingness and resentment. Seeing this, an idea immediately formed in my mind. If I wanted to retaliate, I had to strike where it hurt most. Though this was a women's banquet, the residents had still prepared some light wine for use. How perfectly suited for beginning a little performance today. I took a small sip of wine. The taste was strong and spicy yet smooth. The alcohol content was stronger than I'd expected. Inwardly, I couldn't help but sigh. Even though Vivienne was mistress of the rear palace, how could her scheming be so crude? She only knew one low-level trick, primarily destroying reputations. Did she really dare display such tactics before me? I pretended the wine had gone to my head and couldn't hold my liquor, my body swaying as if about to collapse. Right at that moment, Vivienne stepped forward to support me, her face full of apparent concern. "Sister Vivienne, are you all right? Let me help you rest for a bit." Later, when your fourth prince arrives, he can fetch you. I thanked the crown princess. I lowered my head, feigning a dazed state as I nodded in response. She showed not the slightest suspicion, even appearing rather smug as if everything was already in her grasp. I was led into a small, secluded courtyard. The place had clearly been prepared in advance. Incense had been burning in the room for quite some time, its scent subtle and faint, but perceptive as I was, I immediately recognized it as something far from ordinary. I tried hard to hold my breath, suppressing each inhalation. Fortunately, the front courtyard was still bustling with festivities. She couldn't stay away too long. Before leaving, she only said briefly, "Follow the plan," then hurriedly departed. The moment she disappeared from view, I immediately sprang up, quickly moved to the window, wrapped the incense burner carefully in cloth, and threw it straight out the window. The incense smoke dissipated in the wind. I laughed coldly to myself. "Vivienne, you want to trap me? Then let's see who falls into this snare first." Fortunately, the incense had already burned for some time. The scent still lingered in the room, but its stimulating effect had diminished considerably. Not enough to cause any major incident. I pretended to lie unconscious on the bed. Sure enough, moments later, someone pushed open the door and entered. Upon seeing me, he let out a laugh full of lustful desire, muttering, "As expected, the princess consort of the fourth prince, truly a beauty beyond compare." This person was no stranger. He was Vivienne's half-brother from a different mother, a wastrel who spent his days in debauchery. Now Vivienne had sent him here as a filthy pawn. Just as he bent down about to lay hands on me, I immediately opened my eyes and struck him with a chop to the back of his neck, knocking him unconscious on the spot. Without time to think further, I dragged him to hide in the wardrobe, carefully locked the door, then flipped myself out through the window. The moment I stepped outside, I took a light breath, immediately frowning. The scent in that room was truly nauseating. "Vivienne, you truly spare no underhanded methods." But I couldn't linger here. More important matters still awaited. I circled around to the front courtyard and saw the silhouette of a young woman standing alone by the pond, her bearing lonely and desolate. I approached, staring at her intently, then spoke slowly. "It must hurt terribly, doesn't it? The person you love married someone superior to you in every way, status, background, ability. No matter who you marry in the future, you'll never measure up to that elder sister." She turned to look at me, her voice cold. "I don't understand what you're talking about." I smiled faintly, looking at her, my voice gentle yet deliberate as wind blowing across the pond's surface. "See that small courtyard over there? Inside lies something that can help you fulfill your wishes. You need only use it properly. Afterward, not only wealth and glory await, but even the person you love can be by your side." "Miss Serena, surely you're moved. What you saying? How can you speak such words?" Serena Shen spoke as if denying it, but the wavering in her eyes couldn't be concealed. I knew she had been shaken. I pressed forward another step. "Opportunities come only once. Seize it tightly." I almost forgot. His Highness the Crown Prince has always been quite fond of viewing poetry. With that, I turned and left, concealing myself behind a nearby decorative rock formation, observing the courtyard's movements from afar. As expected, after some hesitation, Serena slowly walked toward that courtyard. The moment had arrived. I casually called over a passing junior maid, instructing in a low voice. "I just saw the crown princess seeming unwell, heading toward that small courtyard over there." That maid glanced to Serena's figure about to enter the courtyard. Not suspecting anything, she hurried off to report to Crown Prince Adrien. After all, Serena's build and profile did bear several resemblances to Vivienne. From a distance, in a moment of urgency, mistaking one for the other was entirely understandable. In no time at all, I saw the Crown Prince rushing anxiously toward that courtyard, his expression clearly showing concern. Immediately after, sounds of commotion, shouting, and collision erupted from within the room. My plan had begun. Not for any other reason than because once you start a performance, you must see it through to the end. The moment that junior maid ran off to fetch someone, I secretly returned and placed the incense burner back in the room once more. By the time Adrien arrived, Serena had already been affected by the incense, her vital energy in chaos, unable to control herself. Adrien, too, had just been drinking. His body heated. Seeing what he believed to be the crown princess lying there weakly, he couldn't think of anything else. Serena was still an innocent young lady who didn't understand such matters. Though initially she followed her instincts in intoxication, midway through she began to feel frightened, crying out and weeping. But Adrian had already lost control. How could he possibly stop? Thus, amid her heartbroken sobs, the crown prince forced her to completion. The rear courtyard rang with gut-wrenching screams. Even if they wanted to hide it, they couldn't. Meanwhile, I continued pretending not to have sobered from the wine, never showing my face before Vivienne. She heard the faint cry from the small courtyard and, assuming it was me and her wastrel brother who had succeeded, hurriedly gathered her skirts and rushed over to catch us in the act, planning to douse me with a bucket of cold water. Who could have imagined that the moment she pushed open the door, before her eyes lay the scene of Adrian, having just achieved satisfaction, his clothes disheveled, while beside him sat Serena huddled on the floor, face streaked with tears, unable to cry aloud. Vivienne's face immediately turned deathly pale, even beginning to tremble slightly. The noble ladies nearby, seeing the situation, immediately requested to take their leave, each tactfully finding excuses to withdraw. Vivienne stood frozen like stone, repeating over and over, "No, this can't be. This can't be." Meanwhile, I remained leisurely seated behind the decorative rocks, sipping tea and clicking my tongue with a cold laugh. Indeed, a woman's venom is the most ruthless. Feeling satisfied now. Do you realize how reckless today's actions were? If Vivienne discovers you sent that maid to fetch the crown prince, what will you say then? Just as I was at my most triumphant moment, that familiar voice suddenly rang out behind me. It was Vincent's voice. "My lord husband." I startled violently. Before I could turn around, he had already thrown my thoughts into disarray. Still calculating how to respond, he had already burst into laughter. "Rest easy, that maid was one of mine. I wasn't comfortable leaving you unwatched, so I sent someone to follow you. Turns out my intervention helped you quite nicely." I breathed a sigh of relief, my heart feeling as light as if a boulder had been lifted. Watching him smile with that roguish grin, his manner carrying several measures of mischief, I felt simultaneously annoyed and amused. Unable to help myself, I raised my hand to punch his chest, but the moment I struck, he caught my wrist firmly. I tried to pull away but couldn't free myself, ultimately resigned to letting him hold it. He gently gripped my hand, his large completely enveloping my small fist. The gesture clearly carried a childlike quality, yet it made my heart soften. I couldn't help but smile softly, my eyes bright as sunlight shimmering on the still pond. This man truly was nothing like the outward appearance he displayed. In complete contrast to the relaxed atmosphere between Vincent and me, the scene with Vivienne, Adrian, and Serena was one of utter humiliation. After regaining her senses, Serena wept ceaselessly, unable to speak coherently. Adrian, while fastening his robes, said casually to her, "Rest assured. Now that you belong to this crown prince, naturally I will take responsibility. I will immediately enter the palace to see the prime minister and request a decree to bring you into the residence as a secondary consort." Upon hearing this, Vivienne's expression changed in an instant, and she exploded on the spot. "What does the crown prince mean by this? I do not agree to this matter." But Adrian paid her no attention whatsoever. He naturally knew full well that the woman he had just taken was not Vivienne but Serena. But so what? Both were daughters of the Shen household anyway. Moreover, he had long known of Serena's unrequited feelings for him. A gift voluntarily delivered to his doorstep, he had no reason to refuse. He even thought, both being Shen family members, what difference did it make which one became the secondary consort? He knew clearly that the relationship between the two Shen sisters wasn't as harmonious as appearances suggested. There was even hidden jealousy between them. Adrian laughed coldly to himself. Years ago he had staged an elaborate illness, pretending deep affection for Vivienne Zheng, forcing Father Emperor to grant the marriage, and had nearly succeeded. Yet in the end, everything was ruined by Vivienne. Thinking of how she had joined forces with the Empress Dowager to apply pressure, how the Prime Minister had openly coerced. How could Adrian not harbor resentment? Today could be considered repaying Vivienne a portion of that favor. "You wouldn't let me marry the woman I loved. Then I'll marry your younger sister. Watching you furious yet powerless, isn't that far more interesting?" As for Serena, not bad at all. At least in the eyes of the Prime Minister and Empress, she was obedient and easily controlled. Bringing her into the residence as secondary consort would raise no one's suspicions. This matter not only preserved the Prime Minister household's dignity, but could also be seen as following popular sentiment. The only issue was that Serena wasn't someone who would remain content, and Vivienne even less so. The suffering days to come would be the karmic retribution Vivienne must receive. I stood observing from afar in silence. Adrian's eyes at this moment were dark and inscrutable. Impossible to read his thoughts. Suddenly, a realization flashed through my mind. I understood what he was planning to do. My entire body turned cold by half. After all, Vivienne had once been his woman, their feelings deep and genuine. Yet now she was being guarded against by him, used as a disposable pawn. When I first married into the virtuous prince's residence, Vincent once told me that years ago, it was actually Vivienne who had actively proposed an alliance with the crown prince, out of admiration and trust, wanting to devote her full efforts to assist him. Yet looking at today, Vivienne seemed far less clever than she believed herself to be. I sighed softly, my emotions no longer containing much triumph. Even having taken revenge against her, my heart felt strangely hollow. Like a cunning rabbit killed and cooked, the hunting dog no longer holding value. Sad, yet also realistic. This was the nature of power struggles. No one truly won. If you don't want to watch anymore, let's go home. Vivienne has weathered storms before, she's not worth pitying. While I was still lost in chaotic thoughts, that familiar voice rang out close to my ear. I suddenly snapped back to awareness, only to discover my entire body had been held tightly in Vincent's embrace since who knows when. Seeing I was no longer distracted, he decisively lifted me up, glided lightly over the walls, and carried me away from the crown prince's residence like a passing breeze. Only after landing safely did I realize his martial arts skills were extremely high, even higher than mine. Yet all this time I had been completely unaware. The feeling of being outmaneuvered by him left me both annoyed and frustrated, my expression darkening. He, however, looked at me and smiled faintly, his face full of teasing amusement. That evening, he refused to let me off, insisting on being playful with me. His mouth claimed it was because watching that springtime palace drama, right before our eyes, had inspired him, making him feel we shouldn't waste a short spring night and should seize the moment. I had originally planned to refuse with a stern face, but ultimately couldn't withstand his persistent coaxing and resigned myself to one round of playful intimacy. The result was that neither of us could get out of bed the next morning. After all, I was the only mistress in this residence. None of the servants dared presumptuously disturb us. It wasn't until Luke noticed no one had emerged from the chamber all morning that he dared knock gently on the door. I punched Vincent hard in frustration. This was all his fault. He clutched his stomach laughing, his expression showing not the slightest remorse but growing even more triumphant. Vincent laughed with extreme satisfaction, even deliberately muttering, "I thank my beloved consort for acknowledging my excellence." I looked at his smug, self-satisfied manner, paused slightly, then tilted my head and asked, "Your Highness, have we met before? Why do I always have this feeling that I've encountered you somewhere?" He raised his eyebrows, the corners of his mouth curving into a smile that was half mocking, half meaningful. "We have met. It's just a pity that a certain absent-minded person only ever remembered my eldest brother." "When was that?" "It was the time you were pushed into the river. I was the one who carried you up from the water, but somehow afterward you misremembered and stubbornly insisted it was my eldest brother." At this point, he let out a soft huff, full of indignation. Hearing this, my heart shook as childhood memories suddenly surged forth. When I was small, there was indeed a time when I was truly pushed into a pond. After being rescued, I ran a high fever for a day and night. Upon waking, I only vaguely remembered that someone had saved me, but at the time I hadn't seen their face clearly. When I grew a bit older and met Crown Prince Adrian, I immediately became certain that person had been him. I believed without a shadow of doubt. So I had been mistaken about the person all these years. As a child, because no one else would play with me, and only the Crown Prince paid me any attention, I clung to Adrian inseparably, thinking I would want to follow him for life, never imagining that the life-saving benefactor from those years was the very person I had misunderstood all along. I frowned in thought. Before I could say anything, Vincent had already leaned down to kiss my forehead gently, coaxing in a tender voice, "This prince doesn't mind. After all, Now you're already my princess consort. When I was young, my tutors were very strict with me, and mother consort rarely allowed me to go out and play, so it's normal you didn't recognize me. I just never expected that not only would you fail to remember me, but you'd even show extreme dislike. Thinking about it still makes me angry. I stayed angry for quite a long time. If your eldest brother hadn't been my close friend and explained that you had a high fever at the time so your mind was confused, I probably wouldn't have been able to bear it. I gazed at him intently, my eyes shimmering like water, then suddenly asked directly, "So you do like me, don't you, husband?" The unexpected question made Vincent immediately flush red. He quickly turned his head away, mumbling, You are this prince's consort. Isn't it natural that I like you? You talk too much. I must go handle state affairs now. You slept late last night, so rest a bit more. Later I'll have Luke prepare some good food for you. Don't worry about anything." With that, he strode quickly outside, his ears still flushed red, making me laugh uncontrollably. The moment he finished speaking, he turned and fled as if escaping creditors, making me burst into laughter. I stared wide-eyed as our virtuous prince hurried away, practically leaping over the threshold, and nearly losing his shoe. I curled up in the blankets, clutching my stomach as I laughed until my cheeks hurt. But after finishing laughing, I discovered I truly was exhausted, so I burrowed back under the covers for a deep afternoon nap. A few days later, Luke came to tell me all sorts of interesting stories from the Crown Prince's residence. Everything unfolded exactly as I had predicted. Serena Shun was brought into the residence by Adrian as a secondary consort. Not only did the Empress Dowager approve with satisfaction, but the Prime Minister couldn't stop smiling. Previously, due to the binding relationship between the Empress and Vivienne, Adrian had always opposed the Prime Minister's household and shown little warmth toward Vivienne. But now things were different. He showed favor to Serena, who was also a Shen family daughter. Wasn't she easier to control? One arrow, two targets. Gaining the Crown Prince's affection while tightening the reins to keep him in hand. Everyone at court laughingly called this a doubly joyous occasion. The only person excluded from this great celebration was Vivienne. From the moment Serena entered the residence, Vivienne immediately quarreled with Adrian, her fury evident, and rightly so. The person she had devoted her heart and soul to help, the person she trusted as her lifelong partner, had trampled her beneath his feet for a younger sister. Who could endure such pain? This time Adrian was no longer as before, no longer yielding to Vivienne as always. On the contrary, he directly took up residence in secondary consort Serena's courtyard. Serena was a secondary daughter who lacked Vivienne's pride and willfulness. She also understood what it meant to be powerless over one's own fate. This made Adrian feel as though he'd found a kindred spirit who shared his circumstances. It was precisely this compliance and acceptance that made his heart soften further. The result was that Adrian increasingly favored Serena. This scene finally made Vivienne realize something was wrong. She sought out Adrian to demand clarification, but he couldn't be bothered to pay attention and continued staying in Serena's quarters. Unable to bear this cold treatment, Vivienne went directly to the palace to seek audience with the Empress Dowager, asking her to intervene and suppress Adrian. Only after being scolded by the Empress did Adrian show some restraint. However, according to palace gossip, Adrian was no longer intimate with Vivienne. Even if he reluctantly spent the night at her quarters, during the day he would always find excuses to visit and console Serena. Each time this happened, Vivienne could only grit her teeth and swallow her resentment, her eyes red with fury yet unable to do anything. She caused several scenes, but ultimately the Empress lost patience with mediating and even bluntly scolded her. No magnanimity, no capacity for tolerance, not a trace of the bearing befitting a crown princess. That single statement struck directly at Vivienne's pride, leaving her with nothing to say in her defense. This was the ending for someone who had obstructed others from achieving happiness. And also the beginning of the tragedy she had sown herself. Things being as they were, if Adrian truly ascended the throne in the future, what face would Vivienne have to speak of being mother to the nation? To teach her magnanimity and tolerance, the Empress even specially bestowed 2 palace maids upon Adrian as concubines, while rewarding secondary consort Serena with many precious items. Though Vivienne held the title of legal consort, she had ultimately fallen completely from favor. Once showered with endless affection, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household pampered like a treasure. Now she was merely an empty title abandoned in the rear palace. Yet all of this was an unexpectedly satisfying gift to me. When I schemed to entangle Serena with the Crown Prince, initially I only wanted to make things difficult for Vivienne. I never expected it would trigger such a domino effect. The satisfaction was truly indescribable. Recently, Vincent had grown increasingly busy. Before leaving, he only managed to stop by and instruct me briefly. Mother Consort just sent word. Father Emperor's health has deteriorated lately. The Empress Dowager has been secretly meeting with quite a few court ministers. Matters have reached this point. I cannot afford not to be vigilant. He paused, his gaze more serious than ever before. I know you still harbor deep resentment toward my eldest brother and the Prime Minister's household, but I hope in the coming days you won't take any action. Your Highness. I looked at him, my voice catching. You also know the Prime Minister was involved in my eldest brother's disappearance, and my third brother also died on that distant battlefield. How can you ask me not to hate? Vincent sighed softly, but his eyes remained utterly resolute. This prince knows. But I hope you trust me. Whatever you want, whatever justice you need from that day, I will certainly reclaim it for you. So from today, don't leave this courtyard anymore. I've already had all the people from the General's manor brought here. They will attend you properly. I wanted to say more, but seeing the steady, profound look in his eyes, I ultimately swallowed my words. After a long while, I finally nodded slightly and said gently, Your Highness, whatever you're planning, you must be careful. Vincent pulled me into his embrace, murmuring by my ear, This prince remembers. My good Vivienne. Whatever you know, whatever you see, trust me, understand. With that, he released me, turned and left, his figure resolute without the slightest hesitation. I stood there for a very long time, my heart anxiously unsettled. I didn't clearly understand just how much that phrase, trust me, really meant. Was he protecting me, or was he preparing to welcome a great storm about to descend? A few days later, Luke came again, carrying his usual belly full of gossip from the Crown Prince's residence. Originally, he had planned to tell me about how Vivienne, due to the Crown Prince's coldness, harbored extreme resentment and constantly caused difficulties for Serena behind the scenes. But who could know why the Crown Prince so favored his secondary consort, spending every night at her quarters? And the consequence of visiting every night was that Serena had become pregnant. Just one sentence transformed her from secondary consort to meritorious subject. Now the Emperor's health grew increasingly unstable, while the Crown Prince had his firstborn son. The court ministers began subtly leaning toward one side. Things were heating up, but Luke's story didn't only praise the Crown Prince. He smiled with narrowed eyes and continued in a lowered voice, However, our prince is hardly inferior. Recently he brought a beauty into the residence, and within just a few days she's already pregnant. His Majesty was full of praise upon hearing. What did you say? I spoke up, my voice already carrying obvious coldness. My heart suddenly plummeted, a wave of anxiety rapidly rising to my throat. No wonder recently Vincent had repeatedly emphasized I mustn't leave the courtyard, saying things like, trust me. So he had long since taken a concubine. He was still a prince after all, still unable to escape his fate. He had to keep concubines and produce heirs to continue the bloodline. I thought I'd prepared myself mentally long ago, but in that instant my heart still ached to the point of suffocation. If this had happened when I first married him, it wouldn't have mattered at all. Back then, I only thought of borrowing his power to escape the Crown Prince's entanglement, then step by step overturning the blood debt of the General's manor to avenge my elder brothers. But later, everything changed. Real, genuine feelings had developed between us. Add to that the life-saving grace from years ago, and Consort Chune's tacit support. I truly believed that in this lifetime he would have only me as his wife. But I had forgotten he was a prince, someone capable of ascending to the supreme throne of 9-5. How could he keep only one woman in his rear palace? Listening again to what Luke had just said, that concubine's child was already not small, meaning this had happened very early, even before our marriage. So why did he still deceive me? A cold thought suddenly arose in my mind. I recalled how father had secretly given me a private seal when he left the capital, quietly entrusting it to me. He said it was the final card he left for me. If trouble came later, I should use it. That seal represented a secret military force. Soldiers selected from among the bandit group's father had pacified during his pacification mission years ago. Father had said, "I've offended too many people at court. I fear after I'm gone, they'll bully you." Could it be Vincent married me not just for love but also for that seal? If so, then I, Vivian, was nothing more than a chess piece after all. Originally, no one knew of this matter, but that day when he mentioned my eldest brother, I recalled that years ago elder brother had been close friends with him. Add to that his earnest, sincere manner that day, saying he would marry no one but me. I trusted him without a shadow of doubt. Right after he confessed his true feelings, I gave him the jade pendant I always wore. I had never explained the significance of that jade, but that didn't mean he didn't know. Thinking of this, a bone-chilling cold spread down my spine. My legs went weak and I collapsed into a chair, tears falling uncontrollably. Luke knew he'd misspoken and prostrated himself on the ground, repeatedly kowtowing in apology. "Princess consort, this servant erred, but His Highness truly has his difficulties." I begged Princess consort not to blame him. I laughed dryly, my voice choked with bitterness. Difficulties, nothing more than self-interest covering his conscience. "Luke, withdraw. From now on, don't come here anymore. Go tell your master he may rest assured. I, Vivian, will not step 1 foot outside this courtyard. He is a prince. I cannot control him. Whoever he wishes to bring into the residence in the future, I will magnanimously accept. After all, that's what a princess consort should do, isn't it?" My voice was clearly calm, yet tears streamed down incessantly, impossible to stop. My heart had truly grown cold. But let him not forget his own promises. Whatever he once vowed to do for the Jung family, as long as he doesn't break his word, that's enough. With that, I waved my hand, having Fanny escort Luke out. Fanny stood beside me looking on, her eyes glistening with sympathy. Finally unable to restrain herself, she said softly, "Princess consort, please don't be sad. When His Highness returns, ask him directly to clarify everything before grieving. That won't be too late. After all, today's matter is only what Luke said. We can't be completely certain yet." I shook my head slightly, my voice choked yet calm. "Fanny, in the future when you choose whom to marry, you must consider very carefully. It must be your own decision. Don't blindly trust sweet words of love. Such feelings cannot be trusted. Never let yourself suffer grievances. Back when Adrian betrayed me, I dared to abandon him decisively and courageously walk away. Yet when I met Vincent, how did I become so weak? Just because he treated me too well, I mistakenly believed his heart was true. But it turns out he didn't even give me half a measure of sincerity." "Princess consort," Fanny called softly, her voice filled with sympathy. But I had no interest in responding. After all, this path was my own choice. I could blame no one. Having reached this point today, I could no longer completely trust Vincent, because now I understood that blind faith was the sharpest blade. I sat still, my voice neither hurried nor slow, my eyes seeming veiled with a layer of frost. Though imperial family intrigues are complex, one thing never changes: continuing the bloodline is paramount. Whether you're pregnant or not, the court will know sooner or later. I'm merely helping the truth arrive a bit sooner, that's all. Serena sat across from me, her face deathly pale without a trace of blood, her eyes glaring at me with fury as if wanting to devour me alive. "What do you want?" She ground out each word, her voice carrying unconcealed panic. "You've already married the virtuous prince, already become princess consort. Why come looking for me?" I smiled faintly, my finger lightly stroking the rim of my teacup. "True, I've married. But that doesn't mean I can't deal with the Prime Minister's household. You're a Shen family member, also a chess piece I deliberately pushed into the Crown Prince's residence. The game has only just begun." Serena's lips trembled, but she couldn't produce a single word of rebuttal. She knew that if the fake pregnancy was exposed, the consequences wouldn't merely be expulsion from the residence. In court terms, deceiving the sovereign was a capital offense. I stood up, looking down at her from above, my voice cold as ice. "You can come beg me, or you can keep this secret. Either way works. You need only help me topple the Prime Minister's household from within. Otherwise, I don't mind letting the entire court know that secondary consort Serena's belly is also fake." Serena clenched both hands, her nails digging into her flesh. She knew she had no way back. From this day forward, I, Vivian, would personally reclaim every debt owed to the Jung family. No longer waiting for anyone's rescue, no longer trusting in promises. My own hands would be the blade of vengeance. You think just because you say so, I have to believe you. Serena's voice was hard, though her expression had begun wavering. I'll still investigate. I can't destroy my own future based solely on your words. I looked at her and replied casually, you may investigate, but by the time you truly understand, it will likely be too late. I turned and slowly poured a fresh cup of tea, my voice calm yet cold. Do you know why I'm aware of this matter? Because I was the one noble consort Shu, the crown prince's birth mother, loved most dearly years ago. Back then, she feared Adrian and I couldn't have children and once hinted I should consider adopting early. It was precisely that half-hearted attitude that made me suspicious. And when I began investigating, I discovered noble consort Shu's death years ago wasn't as simple as it appeared. Not only did she fake pregnancy, but she also secretly poisoned the princes, making them unable to have children for life. By the time His Majesty discovered it, it was too late. But because it was the imperial family's shame, the matter was buried deep. Almost no one dared mention it. I glanced at her and saw Serena bite her lip, her hands trembling, her eyes no longer calm. You can't confirm that's true. She still refused to yield. I curved my lips in a smile that seemed present yet absent. I can't confirm it, but think about this: why didn't noble consort Shu want Adrian to have children? Why did she mention adoption? Why has Adrian never had children all these years despite having numerous women around him, yet now you're suddenly pregnant? Serena, if this matter is investigated, what do you think your fate will be? I knew she wasn't a fool. I only needed to plant a seed of doubt in her. She would investigate herself, destroy her own dreams of legitimacy herself. I didn't even need to lift much of a finger. Once the investigation began, I would personally reclaim everything step by step. But let them walk into the first trap themselves. A's for Vivienne. Wait until your younger sister begins her rebellion. That's when the real drama will truly begin. My doing this was primarily exploratory. I didn't expect Serena to believe immediately. After all, I also had to thank Luke for inadvertently revealing this. Crown Princess Vivienne had constantly caused difficulties for secondary consort Serena, yet suddenly she became pregnant. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? So I had Fanny seek her out, merely to plant that seed of doubt in her heart. I only needed to make her waver. Then opportunities would come later. Actually, from the moment she first married into the Crown Prince's residence, I had secretly sent people to investigate Serena's past at the Prime Minister's household. As expected, just as I'd guessed, unloved. Only brought from the outer courtyard back to the main residence a few years ago, before that living like an invisible person. How could someone like that genuinely love the family that once neglected her? Even less could she fail to know her own worth. Those of lower birth have even less capacity to let go of life-changing opportunities. And then, just a few days later, Serena personally sent an invitation asking me to go flower viewing with her. Since there was a legitimate visiting card, the virtuous prince's residence couldn't conveniently prevent me, so they had to let me leave. I thus borrowed Serena's influence to openly and legitimately depart the virtuous prince's residence. The first step was complete. From now on, the real game officially began. Before leaving, I inadvertently passed through the front hall and happened to see my dear husband Vincent dining with his new favored concubine, their manner harmonious and warm, looking sickeningly enviable. But only much later did I learn that on that very day, the moment I left the residence, Vincent immediately dispatched people to secretly protect me from afar. When meeting Serena, the first thing she did was unsurprising. She mocked me about being coldly treated by the virtuous prince, her manner smug as if finally releasing pent-up frustration. She'd probably been suppressed by me for too long and finally found an opportunity to reverse the situation. But I only looked at her calmly, showing not the slightest anger. I simply smiled faintly and asked, "How are you different from the concubines in the virtuous prince's residence?" One simple question made her face immediately flush red with fury, her eyes trembling with rage. The truth was, today's meeting had always been part of my plan. Not long ago I had introduced Serena to a divine physician, prescribing her medications to regulate her body. Afterward, she and Adrian were intimate for several days, and indeed she truly conceived. This discovery filled her with shock and joy, while also birthing ambition in her heart. Already pregnant and enjoying favor, she was no longer satisfied with the position of secondary consort. Meanwhile, the person she once considered her lowly rival, me, was now abandoned. making her delusionally believe she had won. I didn't need to expose her. Just this spark of flame would cause her to burn down the crown prince's residence from within. Serena had entered the game. The Prime Minister household's grand drama was about to begin. Don't you want to become crown princess? I looked straight into Serena's eyes, slowly enunciating each word, pouring directly into her secretly harbored greed. That divine physician was actually an old guard from my father's service, medically skilled, who has always secretly followed and protected me. Years ago, father saved his life. He vowed lifelong loyalty to the Jung family unto death. He was the one who discovered the problem lay in the incense in Serena's room. That incense was bestowed by Vivienne and contained fertility suppressing compounds. Once she stopped burning that incense, the infertility symptoms naturally disappeared. Everything afterward was arranged and calculated, a perfect trap luring the wolf into the snare. I actually harbored no deep grudge against Serena. My initial purpose for this meeting wasn't to drag her into a pit, but rather to open a door for Vivienne to bury herself. Serena's pregnancy was a fuse large enough to make Vivienne lose control. Indeed, after learning the news, Vivienne wouldn't believe it, couldn't accept it, yet didn't dare act openly as before. She could only secretly strike from the shadows. Meanwhile, news of the poisoned incense had been secretly reported to the Crown Prince by Serena. Though the Crown Prince hadn't yet exploded in fury, he had begun doubting his legal wife. And I merely gently added another handful of kindling to the fire, casually asking Serena, "Don't you want to sit upon that throne?" My fingers tapped lightly on the table, the corners of my mouth curving into a leisurely smile. Already pregnant and favored. If you still don't fight for it, what's the point of living? A question light as a passing breeze, yet concealing within it a bloodthirsty blade. This was also when I knew Vivienne had no path of retreat left. Meanwhile, Serena had truly extended her claws from their sheath. Do you truly wish your child to forever bear the label of secondary birth, forever living under Vivienne's shadow? I slowly lowered my head to sip tea, then looked directly at Serena again, continuing in measured tones, each sentence like a blade stabbing straight into the softest part of her heart. Are you willing to let her become the mother of the future crown prince, while your child can never raise its head for life? At first, Serena still hesitated, her face unable to hide its wavering. But I gave her no opportunity to hesitate. I pressed forward another step. Do you truly believe being crown princess means security? Right now the crown prince is still controlled single-handedly by the Empress Dowager, has no independent power, must watch her expression with every word. Do you want your child to become a crown prince led around by the nose? Want to be a nameless secondary consort buried alive in the deep palace, trampled by others for life? I paused, my voice suddenly dropping lower. Moreover, if Vivienne dies, whom else from the Shen family can the crown prince rely on? Only you. At that point, you would be the sole support the prime minister could lean upon. You fear the Empress Dowager, but she too is merely the maternal family. If the crown prince ascends the throne, would he truly tolerate an Empress Dowager with excessive delegated authority? I tilted my head, my voice like spring wind yet bone, chillingly cold. Think carefully. If you keep hesitating, the one who benefits will be Vivienne. Do you still remember where noble consort Shu from years ago is now? That single sentence made Serena's face turn deathly pale. I knew she had been truly moved. All that remained was giving her an opportunity to act, a reasonable pretext, and she would personally deliver Vivienne to her death. So she and I deliberately arranged to go flower, viewing together, publicly appearing together, flaunting it for all the world to see. That Vivienne and Serena had formed an alliance. The rest could be left to Vivienne to lose control and strike as before. I only needed to sit and wait for the drama to unfold. Indeed, Vivienne didn't disappoint expectations, leading a group with fierce momentum, attacking viciously as if wanting to take both our lives. Though our side brought few people while their forces were numerous, clearly with premeditated intent. Amid the chaos, a clever attendant quickly ran back to the residence requesting reinforcements. Since I knew martial arts, I constantly shielded Serena, blocking most of the dangerous strikes for her. As for her, whether real or fake, by the time Adrian arrived she was already crying pear blossoms drenched in rain, an absolutely pitiful sight. This matter had witnesses and evidence, seen and heard by all. The crown prince had no way to conceal or defend her. Not to mention their marital relationship. Even the imperial family's dignity could no longer be preserved for Vivienne at this point. Adrian immediately led the prime minister into the palace, requesting the decree to depose the crown princess. After weighing gains and losses, the prime minister had no other choice and reluctantly sent Vivienne to a village estate outside the capital, separated for life, never to return to the capital. From then on, the woman once praised as the capital's foremost talented lady, who had step by step climbed to the lofty position of crown princess, Vivienne, completely vanished from the vortex of power and fled the capital. Outsiders looking in. Some felt regret, some clicked their tongues in pity, but most of all were those who secretly breathed sighs of relief. Thank goodness we didn't follow her too closely back then. Once a chess piece loses relevance, even its shadow is swept away by the wind. Due to the Prime Minister's incident causing disturbance impossible to conceal, he recently didn't dare provoke the Emperor whose health was already declining. He had no choice but to withdraw, conducting himself far more cautiously. However, his visits to the Crown Prince's residence noticeably increased, as if trying to salvage what could still be saved. As for me, because I shielded Serena, I was injured. I heard the Crown Prince personally carried me back to the residence, then personally escorted me back to the virtuous prince's residence. At that moment, the instant Vincent saw me, he erupted in thunder and fury, his face livid, nearly striking right at the Crown Prince residence's gates. I knew nothing of this matter. I only knew that after waking, Vincent remained at my side day and night, yet I couldn't be bothered to speak with him. Daily, aside from recovering from injuries, I only ate meals and played with the caged birds. Each time he sighed, I pretended not to hear. That new favored concubine still sent people several times. He did go, but never stayed overnight. I felt neither moved nor any warmth. Affection arriving late, after one has already been wounded, no matter how tender, is no longer enough to stitch my heart back together. Less than a month after that incident passed, on a night of heavy rain and fierce wind, the palace urgently summoned. The Emperor was in critical condition. Vincent was immediately ordered to enter the palace to attend the imperial bedside. This night of wind and rain would likely sweep away not merely one dynasty, but also shift the precarious balance of power swaying in the shadows. When the inner court eunuch came to transmit the decree, Vincent didn't immediately follow them into the palace. Instead, he ordered the entire virtuous prince's residence sealed. Layer upon layer of soldiers guarding like steel, wrapped bronze walls. Even his new favored concubine was placed in the front courtyard under strict watch, no less protected than a national treasure of the Chun kingdom. Only then did he follow the eunuch into the palace, gone for a full day and night without any news. The following night, amid rain cold as cutting blades, frenzied shouting arose outside the virtuous prince's residence. The virtuous prince plots treason, attempts to murder the new sovereign. The entire residence are accomplices. Open the gates and submit immediately, or you'll be treated as rebels. The gate guards remain motionless as mountains, obviously having long since received secret orders from the prince. No one dared act on their own authority. Right at that moment, that woman, the new favored concubine named Rina, suddenly appeared before me. The first sentence she spoke left me briefly stunned. "Your Highness will be fine. Princess consort, please do not leave the residence." I looked at her coldly, my tone frosty. "Are you trying to instruct this princess consort on what to do?" Rina immediately knelt, saying softly, "Rina wouldn't dare. I only hope princess consort will prioritize the greater situation." I was provoked to speechlessness by her, yet ultimately said nothing more, because I knew she wasn't wrong. At this moment the situation's truth remained unclear. The people outside might be staging a performance. If I acted rashly, I could very well become the first chess piece to be sacrificed. I had to stay clear-headed. For Vincent's sake, for my own, and for the Jung family's justice not yet reclaimed. Outside, sounds of clashing blades rang loud, steel meeting armor, wave after wave as if wanting to pierce through hearts and entrails. Inside the room, everyone's nerves were taut, silently huddling together, the atmosphere oppressively suffocating. What surprised me most was that child. The little one called Vincent's hair. It merely stood silently at the door, lips pressed tightly together, jet black eyes full of vigilance. Yet it neither trembled nor cried. Such a small child commanded respect rather than contempt. Not until dawn the next day, when pale morning light had just begun coloring the doorway, did I hear a familiar voice ring out in the courtyard, carrying cold wind and the breath of one returning from battle. Beloved consort, open the door. I've returned. I don't understand why. The moment those words finished, my tears fell, impossible to hold back. The child also immediately ran to embrace Rena tightly, softly calling mother. That call carried choking emotion, carried a trace of released fear, silencing the entire rear courtyard in an instant. Amid joyous cheering resounding throughout the virtuous prince's residence, Vincent, clad in blood-soaked armor, strode through the main gate. His entire body reeked of gunpowder smoke and gore, his hair slightly disheveled, his face weary, yet his eyes blazed brilliantly. That bearing remained that of the prince who had once been elegantly unparalleled. He walked straight before me, said not a single superfluous word, embraced me tightly, then said hoarsely by my ear, "Vivian, everything is over." I also gently embraced him once, then immediately released him, turning my calm yet sharp gaze toward Rina and that child. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly in a smile that seemed present yet absent as I said, "Truly, I haven't touched them even once." That statement sounded like an explanation, yet within the tone lay mockery, pride hurt, and a trace of wariness no one knew. Rina truly is a kind-hearted child. He paused slightly before continuing, but if you truly understood them, the one coming to settle accounts with you wouldn't be me. As the words fell, a female voice softly called from behind. "Husband." I turned to look and froze. That person held a woman tightly in his arms, slowly walked before me, gently stroked my hair, and said tenderly, "Our Vivian has grown up." I choked with sobs and burst into tears. After a long while, I finally threw myself into that person's arms, clutching their waist, calling out, "Elder brother." I never imagined in this life I could see elder brother again. I still have family living in this world. In that instant, it seemed all the humiliation I'd endured transformed into tears pouring forth. I cried until I couldn't speak, my body trembling, only managing to force out, "Elder brother, I'm sorry." "Third brother." I couldn't continue. But elder brother only gently tightened his arms, answering in a low voice, "Don't worry, he's also safe and sound." "Really? Of course it's true." Elder brother answered, then immediately continued, "All thanks to His Highness the virtuous prince." "Oh no. We should call him Your Majesty now." Finished hugging yet. The new emperor had no interest in responding, merely opening his mouth to question in a not particularly pleased tone. Elder brother and I both burst into laughter at his teasing. I hurriedly stepped forward to coax him. But he still wouldn't relent, his voice full of displeasure, muttering coldly, "So affectionate with me, yet let Adrian escort you back, and now you're even entangled with others besides me. Empress, have you poured all the propriety you learned into a dog's belly?" I was rendered utterly speechless by his words, but Vincent didn't truly scold me. He only gently stroked my hair with affection, then carried me back into the chamber. Before leaving, he instructed the people behind, "After tidying up, go rest. No need to rush into the palace at this hour." After being intimate with me once, he gently caressed my cheek, saying tenderly, "You've worked hard, my Vivian. But the matter of you not trusting me, we'll still need to settle accounts later." I truly surrendered to his petty nature, yet loved it dearly. Not long after I became empress and moved into the grand palace, did I hear Luke recount that day's perilous circumstances. The Prime Minister and Empress Dowager joined forces to storm the palace, forcing the late emperor to write an edict establishing a successor. After the late emperor passed, they immediately sought the imperial seal to affix to the forged decree. Little did they know, it was all a trap. The late emperor had long since arranged for cabinet ministers to hide behind the rear hall, witnessing firsthand the empress and prime minister's treasonous plot. Only when the virtuous prince led troops into the palace did the late emperor proclaim the true decree, transmitting the throne to the virtuous prince upon his own passing. All those who dared plot treason and disrupt court order were executed on the spot. Before departing, the late emperor said to Vincent, "This is the final thing Father Emperor can do for you." Adrian hadn't even had time for Vincent to act. He immediately committed suicide on the spot. As for the secondary consort awaiting him at the crown prince's residence, upon hearing the news she smashed her head against a pillar and died. Later I heard that Vivienne, at that distant village estate, after learning Adrian had suffered catastrophic defeat and died miserably on the battlefield, also chose to follow him, directly hanging herself. Hearing this at the time, I couldn't help but sigh with emotion, never expecting someone even more devoted than myself existed. Elder brother was in theft as Grand General, taking over the general's manor. In an instant, the general's manor became a coveted prize everyone desired. No one mentioned the years of trampling our household underfoot. The matter of elder brother and third brother being ambushed unto death after deploying to battle years ago also had new conclusions. It turned out everything was schemes plotted by the Empress and a faction of the Prime Minister. The reason was none other than elder brother having been close with Vincent since childhood. They feared he would help Vincent seize the throne. But karma turns. In the end they still fell defeated at elder brother's hands. I heard that when elder brother met disaster, Vincent had silently arranged behind the scenes, giving him a new identity to hide incognito without detection. Later, when I gave Vincent the jade pendant, it was actually elder brother who carried that pendant to marshal troops. After I resented Vincent, he completely shouldered all blame in elder brother's place. Each time he reproached me, my heart would ache endlessly. I always had to carefully coax before this person would deign to speak with me. Truly an emperor as difficult to placate as he was adorable. Vincent ascended 3 months after the late emperor's passing. Upon ascending, he granted general amnesty throughout the realm, changed the reign title to virtuous harmony, symbolizing peaceful people and prosperous nation, wise ruler and capable ministers, tranquil world and calm seas. 1 month afterward, I received the Phoenix Seal, becoming his empress. From then on, the virtuous harmony emperor established the precedent of loving only one person for life. During his reign, favorable rains and winds blessed the land, common people lived and worked in peace. Later generations called it the virtuous harmony prosperity. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please give me a subscription and a like or comment to motivate me to produce more stories. Thank you sincerely for listening. Love you always. This tale teaches that true strength lies not in clinging to those who betray us, but in recognizing our own worth and walking away with dignity. Vivian's journey shows that love built on deception crumbles, while genuine affection, though tested by misunderstanding, endures through honesty and sacrifice. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, but living well and reclaiming one's power. Trust your instincts, demand respect, and remember, those who truly value you will prove it through actions, not empty words. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.